This message is brought to you by DoNotAge.org, the longevity research organisation that's on a mission to extend healthspan for as many people as possible via products that actually work. Start your journey today at DoNotAge.org and use code LLAMA for a 10% discount. That's LLAMA.
Hello and welcome to the LLAMA podcast. I'm Peter Bowes, and LLAMA, Live Long and Master Aging, is where we explore the science and stories behind human longevity. It's often said that some people achieve a great age in part because of their attitude or mindset. But how does that work? If we believe that we can, or are simply determined to enjoy a long, healthy life, does that necessarily mean we will? Well, Alia Crum is an assistant professor of psychology at Stanford University and director of the Mind and Body Lab there. She investigates the role mindset plays in our health and lifestyle choices and whether, in some way, we could embrace the power of mindset to live healthier lives. We sat down together at the most recent TED Med conference in La Quinta, California. Alia Crum, welcome to the LLAMA podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, what is mindset?
Good question. Mindset is quite literally a setting of the mind. It's a lens or frame of mind through which we view and perceive the world. So, at any given moment, the amount of potential information to take in is unwieldy. So we need simplifying systems, lenses, or frames through which we can organize and make sense of that world.
And how did you become interested?
I became interested in mindset, I guess it started as a child. I grew up in a very interesting household. My father taught transcendental meditation and Aikido. My mother wrote and directed children's plays. And I experienced, I grew up in the town of Aspen, where people came to study sort of mind-body arts. And I kind of was immersed in this environment where we could see people's lives, their happiness, their health changed by focused, deliberate attention on their minds, on what they were thinking. And, I kind of was immersed in that, but I didn't realize that that was unusual until, I moved out of that area. And people were like, wow, what are you talking, mindfulness? And I studied with a professor, Ellen Langer, at Harvard, who does work on a more Western flavor of mindfulness. So not just, sitting in a room alone, but questioning the world. So why is it that hypertension is above 140? Why is it that we view stress so negatively? Why is it that we think, chronic disease is something to fear? And so she had this more inquisitive flavor of mindfulness. And the other STEM, inspiration was through Carol Dweck, whose work on mindset really inspired me. She does work on mindset about intelligence. So do you view intelligence as something that's fixed or something that's malleable? And what she finds is that the mindsets that we choose are not inconsequential, right? If you view intelligence as malleable, you're more likely to persist after setbacks. You're more likely to find a love and joy for learning, and people ultimately are more successful in their lives. So, that's mindset about intelligence, but it occurred to me there, are mindsets about everything, and how do they matter? And
mindset, is it the same as state of mind?
I'm not sure what you would mean by state of mind. A lot of people say state of mind is sort of like the emotions that you're experiencing. Mindsets are more cognitive. They're usually associations like stress is good, or, stress is enhancing, or this treatment will work, or this treatment is risky, or I'll never learn to play the piano, or I can get better with time. These are, simple sort of cognitive associations, lenses or frames of mind through which you view the world.
So for someone pursuing and thinking about their own longevity, their own lifespan or health span and the aging process, which I think to some extent is a mindset issue. I mean, clearly there are practical physical issues associated with that, diet and exercise and the way that we live our lives generally. But is it important, is it indeed vital to have the correct mindset?
Yeah, well, I balk at the term correct.
I thought you might. Yes. As I said it, I thought that's not the right word, but
however, there are more and less useful mindsets to have in any given situation. And when it comes to aging, I'll get into that in a second, but let me just share quickly, the third sort of source of inspiration was through placebo effects. So what placebo effects demonstrate is...
Actually, first of all, define what the placebo effect is.
Sure, yeah. So, strangely, the placebo effect is designed as an effect that occurs from a substance that has no effect, which is just ironic, right? Essentially, placebo effects are the response that occurs when a patient is under the impression that they're getting a treatment or a medication, but in fact, the treatment has no active pharmaceutical substance or there's no surgery going on. So it's a
for
fake
example,
or a faux treatment.
Yeah, if it was an injection, it could be a saline solution, it could be nothing.
Exactly.
Or it could be a chemical.
Exactly.
But the patient doesn't know.
Right, the patient. So what we find is that, it's extraordinarily hard to get a drug passed through a clinical trial process. Oftentimes this isn't because the drugs don't work, but it's extremely hard to show that they work better than a placebo. What does that mean? Do they work better than somebody just believing that they're getting the treatment when in fact they've gotten nothing at all? So I've been fascinated by placebo effects because we've known about them for centuries, and the medical system endorses them in such a way that every time we pass a drug through this clinical trial process, it has to outperform the placebo. But then we kind of forget about it, right? We don't realize what it really is, which is it's not the effect of nothing, right? It's the effect of our beliefs in the treatment. It's the effect of the treatment that we're getting from the doctor through their bedside manner, through their medical ritual. Those things don't just make us say we feel better, but can actually produce specific neurobiological effects. So if you believe that you're getting pain medication, your brain releases endogenous opiates, the body's natural pain relievers. If you believe you're getting an anti-anxiety medication, your parasympathetic nervous system ramps up. That's your rest and digest system. So we've also seen this outside of the medical world in behavioral health. So your beliefs about what you eat can change your body's response to what you eat. So we gave people the same exact milkshake, but told them it was either a low-fat, low-calorie shake or a high-fat, high-calorie shake. And when they thought it was caloric, their bodies responded as if it was more caloric. So back to the question of aging, as you might imagine, we think that there's certainly an effect of our mindsets about aging. Now, I haven't done this work, but Becca Levy, who's a professor at Yale University, has done a lot of really important work exploring this question. So what she's shown is that, in various cultures differ, but in the U.S. in particular and more Western cultures, we have a pretty negative view of aging. Right. So we have this kind of, and when do we get it? We get it when we're not old, right? We get it when we're young and we see, people getting old and losing mobility and losing their minds. And we have this kind of view that aging is an inevitable decline. The problem with that mindset is that we will all grow old, right? So you create these stereotypes of what it means to age. By and large, they're negative. And then we inevitably become old, right? So we're in some ways self-stereotyping ourselves. And what she's shown is that those mindsets, like these other places, aren't irrelevant. So people who have more positive mindsets of aging, viewing aging as, a process towards gaining greater wisdom, a deeper sense of connection, a deeper appreciation for what it's like to be human.
Or perhaps those people who don't necessarily consider aging to be equal to frailty or disability or mental decline, and that you can have a positive attitude about it, that you could still be very old and still have all of those faculties.
And very vital, and perhaps even more vital than you've ever been. So what she's found is that when people have that exact mindset that you're describing, their risk of dying is less. So mortality rates are lower. And there's a reason for this. There's a couple, proposed mechanisms. One is they just have more of a will to live as you get older, right? Another is they're more likely to engage in health-promoting behaviors. So what this is showing is that, and also when you prime people with these kind of negative associations with aging or the positive ones, those have an immediate effect on your cardiovascular health. They also have an effect on how quickly you'll walk to the elevator after seeing those associations.
Or even take the stairs.
Or maybe you choose to take a stairs. So you can see that the mindsets that we choose are not irrelevant. They create self-fulfilling prophecies. So if you believe that aging is an inevitable decline, you start noticing things that reinforce that belief. Your motivation is to, it's not worth it. Right? Your physiology changes and your affect changes. It feels crappy, right?
You're more inclined to give up.
Exactly. So through these, changes in attention and physiology and motivation and affect, we create the reality that we set out for ourselves through that mindset. In aging, the cultural mindset is very, very strong.
So how can we use this knowledge and this science-based research to help us, those of us who are inclined to be positive about aging? How can we embrace this knowledge?
Yeah, I think the first step is recognizing that our mindsets matter, that we tend to assume that the things we believe are a reflection of the reality that is. So we think, well, of course I think that, aging is an inevitable decline because I see it, right? Because that's what is, right? And we forget that, or we don't fully realize that our mindsets aren't just a reflection of the reality, but they create the reality. So when we start to get that, we have more freedom in our choices. We might then say, hey, I'm not going to think that way anymore. I'm going to focus and look at all of the amazing people in my life who are old, right? The people who are models of vitality well into their 90s. That's what I'm going to focus on, right? Ultimately, it's a choice. And that's the beauty of mindset is we can choose.
And is it possible to quantify from your research and the research of others to what extent a positive mindset can affect us? But clearly, it's a combination of factors as we grow older. Mindset is one, and as you've illustrated, important factor. But then there's the practicality of actually doing the exercise and not just thinking about it, and of eating the right diet and moving forward in a quantified way that will achieve that longevity. So to what extent is mindset important? Is it 10% or is it 9% or are we all different?
Yeah. So don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that if we just, believe that we'll live forever, we will, right? There are objective forces.
That's what went through my mind. Yeah.
There are objective forces. So certainly, there's a natural process that happens when we age. There's a natural process that happens when we eat or when we have stress. But what I am trying to say is that we don't yet know where those limits are, right? So we don't actually know how powerful our mindset can be. We're testing this, right? But even then, there's always ways to make the mindset even stronger, right? So I think that the optimal state to be in is one in which you're not denying death, right? You're not denying that we grow old. You're seeing it for what it is and recognizing that we have choices within that to change the way we're viewing it. And what's ironic is that when we actually accept death and accept aging and choose to view the beauty in it, that's motivating, right? We don't have to then force ourselves to do these things. It's like, oh, great, I want to go out and do all the, the things in life that make me more vital.
So what on a daily basis, let's say we don't fully understand the science yet, but what on a daily basis can we do to make sure that we're in the best mindset possible to have that good day and maybe a good week and ultimately a good long life? What can we do we all start off some days, they're not great. Something goes wrong.
Yeah.
The dog's misbehaving. The children are playing up, and it isn't great for a moment. But what can we do practically to put ourselves in that positive mindset?
Yeah. Again, I worry about the, what's the best mindset question. The question is, what is our mindset, right? That's where it starts, right? How am I viewing the world today, right? And just that little bit of awareness can relinquish you from being kind of totally reactive, right? We can choose, right? Okay, I'm feeling stressed today because I'm giving a presentation or I have an important interview. Well, why am I feeling that way, right? I'm stressed because ultimately there's something I care about here. Well, then it makes sense, right? Maybe then I want to embrace that stress, right? So I think that it's more just, asking ourselves the question, what is the mindset that I'm in right now? And how is that affecting my life? And are those the effects that I'd like to see? Or might I want to kind of reverse engineer a more useful mindset?
I'm interested in your use of language, or indeed your correction of my use of language, and not say best mindset. Is it therefore more accurate perhaps to talk about a more positive mindset or a negative mindset?
Yeah, no, actually, because I think that there's been ever since Norman Vincent Peale's, The Power of Positive Thinking, I think there's this misinterpretation of optimism and mindset as being just, you just need to view everything as rosy, right? You just need to think positively. And there's lots of benefits to positive thinking, but what we're finding in the research is that the effects of mindset are more specific. So it's not, I do a lot of work on stress, and the mindset is that we think is most useful is not stress is good, right? Because stress isn't good, a death of somebody in the family or a major health concern or a loss of a job, these are not good things. The more useful mindset is stress is enhancing, right? Which is different. That says the experience of going through a loss in the family or a loss of a job can have, provide the fuel through which we can attain a greater sense of growth and understanding and resilience.
Or to deal with a similar situation again the next time something equivalently stressful happens.
Exactly. If you look back in your life and think about times where you've learned the most or grew the most, I would venture to guess that all of those involve some stress, right? So it's just part of the process. So the mindset research is, I think it's misinterpreted when it's seen as, just get the most positive or the right mindset. It's every mindset has effects, usually ones that are self-fulfilling. So let's be more mindful of those mindsets.
I'm curious to know, in your daily life, as you look at think about perhaps your longevity, first of all, do you think about it? We don't all. I hesitate to say obsess about it, but I think about it a lot because I'm fascinated about the process. But is it something that you pay attention to?
Yes, I do. I think about it a lot. Hazel Marcus has done some really interesting work on what she calls possible selves. And she's shown that a lot of what we're driven by are not just kind of, our self-esteem now, but our visions of what could be possible for us. And so I am fascinated by that, by how what I kind of visualize or see for myself in the future is affecting me in the current. And I have lots of positive role models that I've been exposed to in my life. My great aunt was 95 when she died. She started the gift shop at the Boston Ballet, and till the day she died, she took the subway into work and watched every single performance of every ballet. I mean, she was just captivated. So she's an inspiration to me. And
up until the age of 95.
Up until the age of 95. And so I think there's hope in that, and I also am not afraid of dying. If it turns out that I, have a death-inducing disease, then that's okay too, right? And I think there's freedom in that. I think there's freedom in knowing that no matter what's in store for me, I have the capacity to choose my reaction to that and to embrace it in a way that's meaningful.
And your great aunt, did she talk about her great age, and did she express any opinions as to why she had managed to survive so long?
She said She didn't really, which I find interesting. She wasn't so caught up in it. I think you hear a lot, even, people in their 40s are like, oh, well, I'm getting old. People in their 30s, it's like, oh, well, now this is because I'm old, and it's an obsession, right? And I think that was perhaps what was most remarkable of all, was that she didn't weigh herself down by those thoughts. She just was who she was and did the best she could do every day and engaged with the world in the way she could and the way she wanted to.
So perhaps there is a lesson in that for all of us, that you don't obsess about these things, and life just goes on, and you just embrace it and make the best of what for her clearly was a very good and healthy and long life.
Yes. And not, obsessing also means not denying it, so it's kind of just, it's there, but, we focus on the things that we value, the things that we want to do. We don't need to be distracted.
In terms of mindset, a lot of people talk these days about daily rituals and daily routines, that in a very positive sense, that certainly successful people talk about their morning meditation routine and putting the phone away, and those aspects of our lives that create stress. How significant do you think they are in terms of mindset? Thinking about how you, on a daily basis, conduct your life.
I'm a mindset researcher, so I think their effects of the rituals that we're choosing in large part depends on our mindset about those rituals, right? So if we believe that meditation is the best thing for us and we do it, then it's going to have those effects. But the catch with that is, if you believe that I need to have my meditation and then I need to have my yoga and then I need to have my, flaxseed yogurt, and you don't, you miss it one day, then all of a sudden we're caught off on this, horrible day, horrible mindset. And so we also need to recognize that the practices that we create were created, right? And we can be flexible to change and adapt. But I do think some structure can help us create, situations in which our mindsets are shaped most adaptively.
So a lot of this is potentially counterintuitive, that we might do things that we think are, because we're almost conditioned like that, to think it's a negative. And if we don't do these things, as you say, that can build up stress, which is unnecessary.
Yeah. I think a lot of what we're doing is well-intentioned. Think about public health messages, stress will kill you, or if you eat high-fat foods, you're going to have a heart attack, or if you don't get enough exercise, you're going to become overweight and have chronic diseases. These are all intended to motivate us. They're intended to motivate us to go out and eat better and to not stress so much and to exercise more. The problem is that we often don't actually change our behaviors. So now we're not motivated. We haven't changed our behaviors, and we've been kind of embedded with this mindset that what I'm doing currently isn't enough, that I'm going to get sick, that I'm going to get a chronic disease. And so we need to be really, I think, more thoughtful in how we go about, just giving people these messages about the things they should do in their lives, because the ultimate goal is not to change behavior, it's to improve health and happiness. And if we're not recognizing how those messages shape our mindset, we're missing a whole piece, and we might be causing unnecessary suffering.
Interesting. As you move forward with your research, what's the next step?
The next step is to start to, more thoroughly understand the question that you asked, which is how much does mindset matter? In various domains, because it is different. How much does it matter in shaping the effects of diet, exercise, stress, aging, but also in medicine? We know that it matters a lot in treatment for anxiety, depression, pain, cardiovascular disease, irritable bowel syndrome. We don't know how much it matters in cancer and other diseases, but we do think that it matters. So putting the science behind that, understanding what is the role of mindset, what are the consequences, what are the mechanisms, that's a major piece of what we're doing. But we're also, the ultimate question is not just do mindsets have an effect, but what can we do as people or as healthcare providers to consciously and deliberately harness our mindsets So we're doing a fair amount of work trying to understand how can we change mindsets consciously and deliberately, when you wake up in the morning. How can you do it in the midst of real fear or real stress? It can be quite challenging to do it then. So that's the major frontier.
And I imagine crucial to your research is data and big data. How do you gather that information?
We do a variety of different things. I do experimental research. So we have a lab that's it's a doctor's office. We call it our doctor's office because we run a lot of different studies in there where we can vary the things that the doctor's saying, the way that the doctor is acting. We can vary the social cues. And we do other lab experiments, like I mentioned, with the milkshakes, right, where we give people the exact same milkshake. Different labels can measure their gut peptides, their ghrelin. So we have a variety of different experimental studies where we alter or manipulate different mindsets and test the effects. But we're also looking at more realistic settings. So we're doing some work with Stanford's primary care offices, looking at what interventions can we do to shape the mindset of the patient and the provider to more effectively tap into the power of mindset in the social context in their practice. And then last, we're also venturing into the very big world of health tech and starting to understand how we can use these devices to not just give us massive amounts of data, which is helpful, but also understand how that data shapes our mindsets and the ways in which we can change the interface to make them more useful.
And in terms of tech, and you made me instantly think of my mobile phone, which is the tech that we all have with us all of the time. What applications do you see for this kind of technology to positively embrace what we know about mindset?
I think we've yet to see them. I think there are some really interesting things in the pipeline that capture health data from these devices, and I don't actually think these devices have effectively learned how to understand mindset and to capture that. So I'm working with some people at Stanford, James Landay, on this question, but the truth is, I don't think we have those apps just yet. Yeah.
What I was wondering was, clearly there is technology that is intelligent technology. I'm thinking of mapping technology, that there's an intelligence to know that at 6:30 every Saturday morning you go to the gym and your phone is telling you already how long it's going to take to get there because it's understanding that that's what you do every Saturday morning. So I wonder if there's going to come a time when your phone can almost predict your mindset.
That would be fascinating.
I'm jumping too far ahead,
I'm
obviously.
skeptical. I think it's tricky because mindset is so much about meaning and interpretation. It can't be reduced to an electrical impulse.
So maybe that's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing, but I think what we need is more of an interaction between the technology and the kind of perspective, the less tangible things that we as human can enter as data into the device, but that won't necessarily pick up through the molecules or the electrodes.
And just a final question. Your research is totally fascinating, groundbreaking in so many senses. I'm just wondering, from everything that you have learned, in terms, people talk about the light bulb going off, that moment when you realize something, and you've actually taught me a lot in the last 30 minutes or so, but was there a moment for you when you thought, wow, yes, I really get it?
Yes. Remember the milkshakes that I talked about? I had gone into that study thinking, having seen so much data on placebo response, that I did expect and predict that our bodies would respond differently to impressions of what we were drinking. What shocked me was that the effect was counter to what I had expected. So I had expected that believing that you were eating healthy, a low-fat, low-calorie shake would be the best mindset to have. Much like the, positive, I'll just think, think that I'm eating healthy. And what we found was that it was the exact opposite. In fact, the more useful mindset to have in that case was a mindset that you're eating indulgently. Why? Because your body responded as if you had had more calories. Ghrelin levels drop, which signals to the brain, you can stop eating. It revs up metabolism. So what got me there was, what I think I've been saying throughout this interview is that the specificity of mindset, right? That it's the indulgent mindset produces an indulgent response. And the major point in that, though, was we're going about things so wrong in many cases, right? As a, female, I was an athlete, always trying to, maintain my weight, trying to, I need to eat healthy. I need to eat light and fit. I need to eat low fat, And yet what we're doing when we're doing that is putting ourselves into a mindset that is counteracting all the good work that we're doing. So that was, I've done a lot of studies and been, inspired by a lot of things. On a personal level, that was the one that really changed my life the most.
Alia Crum, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And that's it for this episode. The LLAMA podcast is a Right Angles production. You can contact us through our website at lamapodcast.com. And I am very keen to hear from you, your thoughts on the interviews and suggestions for people we could speak to in future episodes. You can follow us and leave messages on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at LLAMA Podcast. Health optimization is what this podcast is all about, and that means taking care of our mitochondria, the energy centres of our cells. Physical strength, avoiding frailty is key, and that's why the science behind urolithin A and the work of Timeline Nutrition is so interesting. You can find out more and get a discount code at our website and in the show notes for this episode.